What if I told you that there were 4 other survivors of the Sosoliso plane crash that you did not know about? I'm not talking about this or this. These were the 2 major survivors. I'm talking about 4 other persons who survived the Sosoliso, but you've never heard of them until now. I know what you're thinking. This boy has come again. Always telling fake news. I'll soon unfollow you. What are you even saying? Well, there were 2 survivors. This guy did a cap rubbish. All na cap. Chill. You see, a lot of details regarding the Sosoliso plane crash, they were not properly documented. For example, Wikipedia still hasn't recognized Bunmi Adams as one of the survivors. In the page of Wikipedia, they said 2 people survived the Sosoliso plane crash. However, they went on to say one of those 2 people died in the hospital. Kachi is pretty much the only recognized Sosoliso plane crash survivor. Until recently, after I have made a video about Bunmi Adams, that many more people even got to know about it. But now I'm trying to tell you that there were 4 lucky survivors of the Sosoliso plane crash that is not being talked about. The only problem is they are not exactly known. The only thing we know about them is where they stayed at the time of the crash. Some people may argue that they are not survivors, but you be the judge of it. Now, the Sosoliso as we know it was booked from Abuja to Port Harcourt. That is as reported. But what we don't know is it was also set for Enugu. The only issue was, where would it go first? Now, from Abuja to Enugu and from Abuja to Port Harcourt, it turned out that Abuja to Port Harcourt was the closest. This plane was supposed to land in 2 places, Enugu and Port Harcourt. There were passengers going to Enugu and there were also passengers going to Port Harcourt. And there were more passengers going to Port Harcourt than there were passengers going to Enugu. But the thing is, where was this plane supposed to land first and where was it supposed to land last? It's not very clear, but from what I got, the Sosoliso plane was supposed to get to Port Harcourt first and then Enugu last. Because at the time, Enugu was one of the major headquarters for Sosoliso. The journey was supposed to go from Abuja to Port Harcourt, then to Enugu. Now, during the flight, it turned out the weather was bad. And the pilots were communicated to, oh look, the situation here in Port Harcourt is eek. Because of that, the plane landed first in Enugu, with the hopes that by the time they'd head back to Port Harcourt, the weather must have calmed down. Except going back to Port Harcourt, the weather was still bad. The pilots could not see the runway, even though they were warned to return back until they were able to spot the runway. They took a leap of faith, and before they realized that they had gotten to the ground, they had crashed, killing almost everyone in the plane except for 2 people. Now, these 4 people were students of the Loyola Jesuit College and they alighted in Enugu. There were the 4 people dropped off at Enugu, and they were the only 4 people going to Enugu. So it was sort of like a lock for them, because the original plan was the plane was going to come to Port Harcourt, and as the plane was heading to Port Harcourt, the weather in Port Harcourt was still bad. So if they had gone to Port Harcourt first, they may have also crashed too, along with the other Port Harcourt passengers. So this is the story of the 4 survivors of the Sosoliso plane crash that is not being talked about. I know some people will say they are not survivors. I actually like to call them survivors. Yes, they were not in the crash, but they were in the plane. With a little bit of luck and good decisions, 4 more lives were also saved, because if they had gone to Port Harcourt first in that bad weather, they would still probably have crashed.